Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, March 21st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 165 days. The game against Michigan in 249 days. There are a couple of exciting pieces of news this morning. One is it is officially spring. We made it. Not the worst winter we've lived through, and maybe not really completely, totally done yet, but still, it is spring. That is always a cause for celebration in the state of Ohio. Another cause for celebration, the women's basketball team just made the Sweet 16. They beat North Carolina 71-69 on a floater from the lane by J.C. Sheldon. 1.8 seconds left. Tony Gerdeman, they never seem to do things the easy way. They have made life quite difficult on themselves over the last 4 or 5 games or so. But man, that was quite a dramatic win for the Lady Buckeyes.
Yeah, to build up a double-digit lead there early in the fourth period, and then come down to the final shot in the final seconds. J.C. Sheldon flying through the lane. Seeing then on Twitter the comparisons of Jordan over Elo with that shot, because there are some similarities from if you search it out based on where the camera angles are. But clutch shot, and I guess that's just what this team does now. Is they'll lead big, and then it still comes down to the wire. But it is still March for another 10 days or so.
Yeah, and they will roll on to the Sweet 16 next weekend. But today we're talking not just about women's basketball, because there was a report out of The Athletic on Monday afternoon about the Big Ten ADs. They're looking at 3 different scheduling models. This is something we've talked about football in the last couple weeks, and just looking at possible ways what this might mean for Ohio State moving forward. This is all starting with the 2024 season, not this fall. This starts when UCLA and USC join the conference next year. But the Big Ten, according to the Athletics report, looking at 3 different scheduling models. One is called Protect 3, one is called Protect 2, and one is called Flex Protect, which sounds like some, the tape sealant thing that the guy slaps on the tank of water. That's what that reminds me of. It's not my favorite option here, but we'll get there eventually. Protect 3 is what we had talked about the last time we talked about this, which is everyone has 3 protected rivals. Protect 2 is, as you probably can figure out, everyone has 2 protected rivals, and then everyone in Flex Protect has either 1, 2, or 3 protected rivals. That seems like that will just set up a nightmare in terms of scheduling and all of that. But they're seeking 3. Here's what according to the report, the Athletic report said that the goal is, quote, to take into account historical and current competitive balance, to play league mates more frequently, and to create pathways to the college football playoff for more teams in the 12-team CFP era. So, what does that mean? Well, let's start with the Protect 3 and what it might mean for Ohio State. It sounds like the Protect 3 would likely be Michigan. Yeah, obviously. Penn State. Okay, sure. I mean, we had talked about that likely being, but that was one of the possibilities, certainly. It sounds like it's Michigan, Penn State, and then pick a team from behind door number 3, and it's not likely to be USC or UCLA. So then it's, is it Illinois? Is it Michigan State? Is it Indiana? Just someone who they're close to geographically, that, it's an easy trip and they've got a long series history. Not a team where they have a history, let's say, but not necessarily a championship history. So, is it the Illabuck rivalry? Is it Michigan State? Is it Indiana? This one, the last time we talked about this, Tony, I was very excited about the possibility of Ohio State and USC playing every other year, or playing every year, and, a trip to California every other year. I'm sure this makes Penn State happier, so okay, I guess.
Yeah, because when we both did this, we had, I think, Ohio State and USC connected, because it makes perfect business sense, television sense. And to not have them play every year, you're leaving something on the table every single year that those 2 programs don't play. Now, is it fair to Ohio State? As we repeatedly said, no, it's not fair. But in a 12-team playoff, if you lose 2 of those 3 games, as long as those are the only 2 losses you have, you're probably still making the playoff. But again, it goes back to the fairness, the competitive fairness, and things like that. But yeah, I just didn't see the Big Ten siding on Ohio State's, the difficulty of Ohio State's schedule, because it just made too much sense to put the two new programs together with the two bluest bloods in the Big Ten, and would it be outrageous to say, how about USC instead of Penn State for Ohio State?
No, I don't think so at all.
Yeah, USC and Ohio State have been rivals longer than Penn State and Ohio State have been conference mates, Yeah,
there's a long history of the Rose Bowl going back to, I think didn't Ohio State they played Cal in the 1920 Rose Bowl, but they've played USA going back to Rose Bowls in maybe the 50s or so. And yeah, that's one where that just seems like that would be a automatic dial turner for just about everyone every single year. But again, I'm sure Penn State would not have been thrilled with Rutgers and Maryland and fill in the blank as a third team. So, I get it, but I don't. Just because I understand it, Tony, doesn't mean I have to like it. There was also at one point there was a rumor that it was going to be Penn State and Michigan and UCLA for the Buckeyes. I would have taken that one too. Every other year go out to Pasadena and get UCLA coming to Columbus. Doesn't sound like that one is likely to happen either. So the Protect 3 is Michigan, Penn State, and door number 3. So we'll see where that ends up. Illinois would make a lot of sense, make the Illabuck an annual game and all that. And oh boy, can you imagine if Illinois becomes a thorn in Ohio State's side like it was in the 1990s once again, sort of out of nowhere. We've seen it before. History is always fun. And so we'll see if that happens. All right, the next one, Protect 2. This is, from Ohio State's standpoint, I think the cleanest, easiest one. It's just basically essentially what they had in one of the earlier versions of Big Ten scheduling, where it was just Michigan and Penn State or Ohio State's protected rivals every year, and then everyone else rotates. This is another one where you're going to end up seeing every 4 years you're going to play once at USC, you're going to play once at UCLA, you're going to get each of those teams at home every 2 years. I would be perfectly fine with this. I think, given the choice between, Ohio State playing Michigan, Penn State, and Indiana every year versus we get a chance to see just, every whatever the math works out to, every 8 years you get to see USC one more time or whatever it is. I think I would prefer this one to the 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we both did our 3 protected rivals, how hard did we work to find a third rival for 12 of the teams, basically, 10 of the teams? Really, there's like a Minnesota or Wisconsin, Iowa, like rivalry game in there that there's really only 2 or 3 teams that would need that third protected rival. And you could still do that in a roundabout way, but there's just, for the bulk of the Big Ten, there's no need for that third protected rival. And you can just go through and schedule those as you want, basically. And you can still, essentially, that third rival that you want can still be on your schedule every year. It just doesn't need to impact anybody else's schedule. I think 2 is the easiest fit. It's the most fair. It makes the most sense for everybody, because when you look at the schedules and you're making your 2 protected rivals, that's fairly easy. And there's only a handful, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 teams where it's like, well, who could be their second? Because for everybody else, there's easy ones, Michigan, Michigan State, obviously Ohio State, Penn State. There's Nebraska, whether it's Iowa or Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Everybody has a second that they like and that they don't want to give up. And so I think, to me, this one makes the most sense because you're not manufacturing much of anything. You're not creating something that is fake, like, land grant trophy out of thin air type of thing. There's long-standing rivals for everybody has at least 2, 1.75 rivals in the Big Ten that they can make do with, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that as you were talking through that, I was kind of going through in my head and figuring out, okay, how are they going to do this? Is this going to be a Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State just sort of group, and they're all, and Penn State plays Ohio State and Michigan State, but I don't think you can, because then you're going to have Rutgers and Maryland raising their hands and saying, but what about us? And the answer to that should be, well, why don't you go back to the ACC and Big East? But that's not what the answer is going to be contractually. So I would bet you're going to see Indiana playing Michigan State as a second rival. spittoon battle for the spittoon or whatever that is. And then maybe Maryland gets Penn State as a second rival, and then, I don't know, Rutgers has to, I don't know, maybe they play Georgetown. I don't know. That's not my problem. The third option is the flex protect model, where it could be 1 or 2 or 3 protected opponents. Yeah, I mean, I guess it does. This just feels like you're setting yourself up for really weird scheduling flukes. And I mean, is the planet going to stop spinning if Minnesota and Nebraska don't play every year? I feel like we'll probably be okay. So yeah, that one, the report said it was the least popular according to the athletic directors. So that's probably not going to be something that comes to fruition. There was one thing, though, Tony, that I thought was very interesting. That according to that report from The Athletic, the Big Ten athletic directors have asked nobody has to travel to Los Angeles twice in one season. So you don't have a game at USC and at UCLA in the same season. Boy, that feels like, if that's that much of a problem, should those teams be in your conference? Because then you're asking USC and UCLA to travel across the country a whole bunch of times. So why is that such a deal breaker the other direction? But again, well, they're the new kids, they're the freshmen, so they're going to get shoved into lockers for a while and have to make a bunch of cross-country flights. And, well, if you don't like it, just go back to the broke boy Pac-12, I guess. I guess that's the message.
Well, Tom, the Big Ten didn't join USC and UCLA. USC and UCLA joined the Big Ten, so they're going to have to travel to the Big Ten. They're going to have to come east, and then I would expect at some point you will see 2 trips to LA for some programs as it becomes normal, maybe. But at this point, yeah, I mean, you want the monies, you got to get the miles, build up the miles, and this whole 1 to 3 flex protect thing. I'm imagining, say, this is the SEC doing it, and Alabama gets Auburn and Tennessee and LSU. And then Georgia's like, well, we only get Florida. And then like, just imagine Nick Saban, the reaction that he would have, and quite fairly to have some teams with 3 rivals and others with like, we don't even really care. And so yeah, I don't see that one happening at all. Like that one, I don't even know why I think they put it in there just because they tried to put together the same thing we did. They tried to do 3 protected rivals, and they're like, well, some only have 1, some could do 3. Let's just throw that as an option. And all the coaches are like, that's stupid.
That does very much feel like someone in the corner just kind of piped up like, why don't we try this? And they went, okay, and we'll put it to a vote. And turns out everyone else thinks it's a stupid idea. So, but thanks for your suggestion. Your input is valued. So yeah, that very much feels like how that one's going to shake out. But yeah, maybe it's going to be like you suggested, a modified 2 and a something, where maybe whatever that third Rutgers and Penn State, for example, maybe they play 4 out of every 6 years instead of every single year or something like that. So you could kind of tweak the numbers a little bit, and Lord only knows how many football seasons we'll have before the number of conference members changes again. That's the other question there.
I'll just say, Tom, there are no stupid suggestions when you're paying companies hundreds of thousands of dollars to come up with answers for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is something. There's a lot of money on the line here, and them getting this right. So I'm sure they're spending a lot of time trying to game out all the different possible scenarios. And every time they do this, I'm always reminded of the ACC setting up its divisions so that it could have the Florida State Miami Conference Championship every game every single year. Something that has happened a grand total of 0 times since that decision was made. So you can try and plan things as much as you want, and life finds a way to make things a little more interesting. One last note on this: when they go to these new scheduling kind of pods or protected rivals, that will be the end of the East versus West thing. So no more East versus West in the Big Ten championship game. It's interesting to me that they don't necessarily spell out that it's going to set up the most compelling Big Ten championship games. So, it'll be interesting to see how this impacts that matchup every year. They talk about the college football playoff. They don't talk about the Big Ten championship game. But you wonder, if Ohio State has to play Penn State and Michigan, but USC only has to play UCLA and Nebraska, and they miss Penn State and Ohio State one year. Does UCLA sort of sneak in with a weaker schedule versus, as opposed to Ohio State, for example? And, I think at that point, you're probably talking about teams. If you're 10-2 in the Big Ten, you're probably getting into the 12-team CFP, but it'll be interesting to see how that sort of shakes out in terms of who gets to go to Indianapolis, too.
Well, and the way it's been for the last decade, you've got West teams sneaking into the Big Ten championship game. So in that way, it wouldn't really be any different if one of those West Coast teams is avoiding playing some of the Eastern powers. But in terms of the East versus West, it will always be a rivalry because these West Coast liberals, Tom, they're coming into the Big Ten.
Tony, I'd suggest you reread the rules of on our message board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. But yes, it is Big Ten Culture Wars. Can't wait. It's going to be fantastic. We are definitely. Are we on the dumbest timeline? I think we all know the answer to that question. So yes, we'll have plenty of time to argue about all the wonderful things that everyone argues about online before the 2024 season starts. But before that happens, we get to talk to Ryan Day. Hopefully not about any of that stuff. Hopefully just about the 2023 spring football season for Ohio State. Buckeyes back on the practice field Tuesday morning, and then we'll be talking to Ryan Day afterwards, kind of get an update on where things stand as the Buckeyes enter week 2 of spring ball. They'll be back on the field again on Thursday, and then Saturday they've got a scrimmage. Guess what? We'll be there. We will be there covering that live and in living color for you. We're not able to shoot video, but we will be able to watch the whole thing and give you a good idea on where things stand as the Buckeyes wrap up that second week of spring ball. So this is going to be a really eventful week at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Might want to sign up. There is blessedly no political talk on the message board, which is always a good start to your internet life. And then also a whole bunch of great Ohio State content. Buckeyes women's basketball will be in the Sweet 16 next weekend. Buckeye men's hockey starting the NCAA tournament next weekend. And then, of course, spring football as well. So lots of stuff going on. Baseball team, softball team, both absolutely tearing it up right now, both off to great starts this year. It is a great time to be a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. So sign up today and be a part of all that fun. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.